Hey guys, Brian here from Digimorphosis, and today I'm going to talk about the Jeecoo M30 Bluetooth desktop gaming speaker. I had previously reviewed Jeecoo's M80 gaming headset, and I'll have the link in the description if you want to check that out. Full disclosure, they did send me these speakers for review, but like all of my reviews, I will be as balanced and fair as I can, and that includes talking about what I feel they do well as where I feel they could be better. Now, first off, we'll talk build quality. These are mostly plastic design, which means a couple of things. Primarily, it means that they're incredibly light, which, if you're using them as portable speakers to pack down into a bag while you're out and about, maybe you're going to the beach, you're going camping, maybe you're bringing these to an office to do meetings, Zoom calls, listen to music there. These are very easy to put in a bag without adding a ton of weight, which is great, and their small footprint means that even on primarily desk usage, they're not going to take over your space and be difficult to find a place for them, which is nice. But also, when you handle them and you pick them up, you can also tell that they're so light that there's not much internal damping in them. And since plastic is not very rigid for resisting vibration, I feel that probably comes at a cost in terms of sound quality, which we'll talk about in a minute a little bit more. So the UI of these is very simple, but I mean that in a good way. There's 4 buttons on them, and that gives you the basic controls of on-off, switching between Bluetooth mode or USB mode. These do have to be powered via USB, but you can also have the audio signal run through the USB from your computer. That way, if you want to avoid Bluetooth, and I feel like that is a nice option for if you don't want to use Bluetooth, maybe you're in a scenario where there's microwaves, there's a lot of noise, and by noise I mean like other Wi-Fi, other signals that can interfere with your Bluetooth, and you want to avoid that. It's nice to have USB as an option. You also have volume up and down, skipping tracks back and forth, and the LED lights that are on these. There's controls to switch up the colors and the patterns that the lights will light up, and you might get a kick out of that. Personally, I'm somebody that's more of the camp that speakers are to be heard, not looked at, so that wouldn't really be a selling point for me, the lights, but maybe it would be for you. But generally, I think the UI is a win. It's very easy to figure out how to use these even without the manual. They do everything that you would want a pair of desktop speakers to do in terms of controls, and that's a win. So the sound quality. I could shorthand it and say that these are about on par with what you would expect for a $30 pair of desktop speakers. Some of the Amazon reviews that I've seen for these were very praising of their robust sound and how outstanding that they were, and I feel like that probably comes from users who primarily have used their laptop speakers, their iPad speakers, things like that, maybe small Bluetooth speakers, and if that's been your experience, then yes, these will probably be a big step up. They're louder, they are a bit fuller in terms of their range of sound, and so if that's you, that's what you could expect. If you're more like me and you primarily listen to music on a full-blown stereo system with floor-standing speakers and a 1,000-watt subwoofer, obviously words like robust and full would not be words that you'd use to describe any pair of desktop speakers, particularly these. That's not a huge knock against them. That's just obviously you wouldn't have that expectation of small speakers like these. Now, some speakers that are small have a surprising amount of bass to them given their design, like Bose often can pull that off. That's not something you see in these, and I think that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the lack of damping for starters. There probably could be more bass to these speakers if they were damped a little better. I suspect that the vibration of the plastic body probably takes some of the bass away in that way. That's been my experience anyway with speakers over the years. Now, their literature gives them a stated frequency range of 60 Hz to 20,000 Hz. That's a pretty standard number that you'd probably see thrown around for small speakers like this. Non-scientifically, just to my ears, in terms of what range of sound is well represented that you hear well, I would probably place that more at 100 Hz to 8,000 Hz. Cymbal crashes and really high-pitched sounds are a little muted on these when I listen to music, and there's very little bass. Now, that's probably a consideration for you if you're thinking of these for gaming speakers, depending on what kind of games you play. If there's explosions and, those types of sound effects that you want to have a bit more fullness in the sound, you may not want a pair of small desktop speakers like these that don't have a subwoofer that comes with them. But if you're looking for a pair of desk speakers on a budget that's more for simple games or Zoom calls or occasional music and things where you just need it louder than your computer speakers tend to get, these will fit the bill nicely. Now, a real thought that I wanted to share on these as well about being USB powered. I consider that sort of a pro and a con. It's nice that USB is kind of ubiquitous, and so it's easy to find a way to power them, theoretically, in a lot of cases. But I feel like the USB powered aspect of them kind of comes in conflict a little bit with who these are ideal for, and I'll explain that. So, if you're working at a desk with these, you probably have a gaming PC that has a whole bunch of USB ports. So it's not a big deal at all to use one of those ports to power this. If you have a MacBook, you probably at least have 2 ports. And so again, it's not too big of an ask to power these. But if you're using them from a mobile device, which is part of what these speakers are marketed for, you're obviously not going to plug your iPhone or something into these speakers to power them. I don't even think that would work. So now you need a power brick, which is not included, to use these, and you're into where am I going to plug that in. That affects portability a little bit, obviously, less so than a Bluetooth speaker that is battery powered where you could just put it anywhere. Something to think of. I actually have retired, evidently I found when I was trying to use these speakers, I've retired all of my USB bricks that were the old USB-A. I only have USB-C bricks at this point, and so I actually didn't have anything in the house to just power these speakers plugged into a wall. And so my only way to use these was plugged into one of my devices. And that leads me into my question with any type of device like these, who are these for? Now, these are marketed as gaming speakers, and I think probably insofar as they have the playful lighting and options like that, that probably does appeal to that crowd a bit. Personally, when I game, I want there to be a truly full and robust sound. I am generally using a headphone amp and headphones like these, and if I were going to use speakers, I would definitely have a pair of desk speakers that had a subwoofer to them. But if that's not what you're into right now and you're just trying to create a budget like setup for your desk, these make a lot of sense for that. Outside of gaming, I actually feel like who these are probably most ideal for is somebody who does a lot of Zoom calls or something at an office, maybe a conference room where you say, I want the sound coming out of this to be loud enough to share with several people that are maybe several feet away, and my regular computer speakers don't do that very well. These would be a great augment to that type of a setup. If you're working at a desk during the day and you just want some music on in the background while you do things, these probably work really well for that. And if you're a person who travels a lot throughout the day, maybe you bounce between coffee shops and an office and client meetings, or you go on site somewhere, maybe you're going camping or you're going to the beach, things like that. You want a pair of speakers that are simple to pack down and you don't want to have to worry about battery life. Having a pair of speakers that are USB powered like this may be really convenient for you. But that could be a con for you as well if you're going into it saying, I don't want to have to run these out of a device, I want to plug them in some other way. Just know that you're going to have your own USB-A power brick to use these. Now there's one thing that I would want to mention with the sound as well, and that's the volume control. Now, some devices have what I would call like a uniform volume, meaning whatever volume you have set on your MacBook or your desktop computer is the volume. A lot of Bluetooth headphones and stuff, that's how they work. There's just one volume that you can control from the device or from your computer, and it's a uniform volume level either place that you're adjusting it. Other speakers, like these, you have your system volume, which is more like the input volume, and then you have the device volume, which is controlled separately. And that's basically how much it's amplifying the input volume. Just something to note, it can lead to confusion if you're not aware of that, such as maybe you're turning up your system volume really high and you're saying, wow, these still aren't very loud. Why is that? Well, it's because your system volume is high, but the speaker's own volume is actually set very low. Or it could lead to the opposite, which I actually had the first time I used these, which is, wow, I have my system volume so low, it's almost on mute. But these speakers still seem a lot louder than I would have expected, and that's because the speaker volume is really high. But it could lead to some inconsistency because without adjusting the volume on the speakers, moving them from my laptop to my PC, there was no uniformity of I'll just go at about 50% system volume on both devices and it'll be about the same. It wasn't. And so to me, what these speakers could do better perhaps is just have a uniform volume that follows the device itself. So if the device says we're at 50% volume, that means the speakers themselves are at 50% volume, and so on. That would probably be a little bit more consistent and a little easier to use for people as a bit of constructive criticism. Otherwise, like I've said, I think for a $30 pair of desktop speakers, these perform as expected, and if this is what you're looking for to complete your desk setup for Zoom calls, office work, or as an entry-level gaming setup, I think these fit the bill fairly well. If you have any questions about these, put those in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful if you're looking at desktop speakers, and thanks again, Jeecoo, for the opportunity to check these out. I'll catch you guys in the next video.